As we reflect on America's 250th anniversary here in 2026, it gives us an opportunity to reflect on St. Mary City's connections to our country's origins. And we know that some of the things that we associate with American rights and American freedoms that we appreciate today had their beginnings here in Maryland even before the colony was established in 1634. We can really look to St. Mary City for some of these key stories, the stories that are foundational to the American experience. Liberty of conscience, first practiced here in Maryland, codified into law in 1649. Just an incredible story, one of the most important experiments that's ever taken place within this country.
And here at historic St. Mary City in the reconstructed capital, I can think of no other place to talk about one of the more important liberties that we have that is entrusted in the First Amendment, the idea of freedom of religion. However, for our time period, 400 years before now and 200 years before the Declaration of Independence, the idea of liberty of conscience was a radical notion in European society. The thought being that a good subject or a loyal subject to the king of your country meant you had to follow the king's religious faith. And George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, when wanting to help grow the English Empire and make money for himself, also wanted to show and prove that one could be of a different religious faith than the state-sponsored religion. In this case, the Church of England, and Lord Baltimore being Catholic. And throughout the history of Maryland in the 1600s, this idea of liberty of conscience and religion played a huge role in the dynamics and some of the conflicts that happened in the colony. And this subject was, again, like I mentioned, so radical that in Europe was causing war. There were, in fact, the 30 Years' War, which had a lot to do with religion. And it was soon after that this idea of the policy of liberty of conscience becomes codified into law with the passage of the Act Concerning Religion, which basically spells out that all people of Christian faith in Maryland can practice their religion freely and without interference from the government. Maryland inspired this idea to other places where you start seeing it happening in Rhode Island and in Pennsylvania, and then eventually codified it into our First Amendment. But even then, that First Amendment didn't apply to everybody. Native Americans were viewed not as citizens, and then eventually when they are viewed as citizens, they still don't have the same rights as far as religion is concerned. And that doesn't change until 1978 with the passage of the American Indian Religious Act, which grants American Indians full rights to practice their faith. So as I briefly shared with you, you can see that one of the most important aspects of our society here in the United States that we celebrate gladly in the 250th, religious freedom or liberty of conscience.
And we see these legacies echoing into the 18th century with the establishment of America, with the definitions of freedom of religion, the construction of representative government. All of these different aspects were experimented with in early colonial Maryland. What could be more important as we look to the 250th?